Dominic Raab, welcome.
Great to be on your show, thank you.
You've been talking about the need to shore up critical mineral supply chains for some time. The timing of your visit to Australia is exquisite. What do you think of the US-Australia deal?
Look, I think it's a really strong deal, a great step forward, and good news, a win-win, if you like, for the US and for Australia. Its remit's very wide. It covers all aspects of critical minerals, from the geological scoping through extraction and processing to recycling and dealing with the waste. I think the financial formula is interesting. So both governments in the first 6 months alone will put in about $3 billion in order to unlock $50 billion worth of investment. It's a pretty smart formula. And of course, with the announcement that AUKUS is getting the green light from Washington as well, and AUKUS itself is a very intensively reliant project in terms of critical minerals, it really feels like at a geopolitical level that partnership is very strong. And if you like, the Western desire and ambition to try and find alternative supply chains for critical minerals outside of China is really starting to take shape.
Would you describe China's behaviour in the critical minerals and rare earths market as economic coercion?
Look, there's certainly an element of that. There's been a 20-year strategy of building up this concentration of the market. China has not just the geological advantages of having lots of graphite and rare earths and other minerals, but it's bought up mines around the world. You can see that with the copper and cobalt mines in the DRC, something like 17 out of 19 bought up by China. It's also gone up the value chain and controls a lot of the refining and the processing. But they've been doing it with innovation and with consistency, availing themselves of the tools of a command economy, particularly massive subsidies, which has created a real challenge for Western investors. And I think in short, we don't really have a free market in this space. So how do we bridge the gap? And what you saw with the US-Australia deal is a really good example of a partnership working with the support of government, but unlocking private sector investment and working with high trust partners. You probably couldn't get two more high trust partners than the Americans and the Aussies, and their Five Eyes partners, their Quad partners, and working to try and solve the problem. And that's what investors need to see.
Given China's dominance in the market, can Australia expect blowback from China after signing this deal with the US in the form of further export restrictions and the like?
Well, Australia's weathered those kinds of pressure before, and if I may say, done it with considerable diplomatic agility and diversified its supply chains, and China in effect backed off. So I think actions speak louder than words. I don't think you'll see a particularly overt reaction. If anything, China might be surprised or a little bit taken aback by the level of ambition and concerted action. And in reality, I think there's no choice. But there's also huge opportunity, not just risk here. Australia is blessed with great resources. It's got ambitions to go up the value chain and bring some of the refining and the processing to Australia as well, with all the jobs. So there are huge wins here for Australia at a local level, at a national level, and at a geopolitical level. And I think it's a question of managing those risks you describe and seizing the opportunities.
You were the UK Foreign Secretary when AUKUS was inked. What does Donald Trump's full-throated endorsement of the deal mean, in your view, for the project's future?
I think it's really important. It's a green light, a stake in the ground, a demonstration of political will, and that's important. It shows that the US wants to ramp up its production in order to meet the demand that they've got at home, but also of a very close, high-trust partner in Australia, an ally. And it's important for guaranteeing a free and open Indo-Pacific. Look at it the other way around. If Britain, Australia and the US couldn't make this work, which government around the world would be breathing a sigh of relief, or indeed cheering the most? And I think it's important to show that we as allies can do these major projects together, particularly in the security space.
Ben Wallace was your cabinet colleague at the time. He was the Defence Minister in the UK when AUKUS was inked. He says Donald Trump's unpredictability means that anything he says can't be relied upon. And to quote Ben Wallace, he's told the ABC, Trump struggles to think in timescales longer than a round of golf. Do you also have concerns about Donald Trump's unpredictability threatening the project down the line?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I understand the froth and political commentary around the president. I've met him, I've worked with him when I stepped in when Boris Johnson as Prime Minister was unwell and just as Foreign Secretary. I think he's decisive. I think he's quite transactional in the sense that he wants to make sure there's a win there for the US. But I think he sees the strategic significance of this. And I think you'll see strong bipartisan support in Washington for seeing this through now. And look, there have been all sorts of questions about this project. But as I said, if Britain, if Australia, if the US can't solve those, then it's a pretty poor state of affairs. So actually, I see this in an optimistic way. Of course, there are always challenges with these long-term projects, and governments will change and their political stripes may change. But I would hazard a guess that actually this one will stand the test of time. And I think that's because the dynamics work. For Australia, for the UK, for America. And again, the prize of guaranteeing that free and open Indo-Pacific is very high.
We've obviously been talking a lot about the Australia-US side of AUKUS, but there's a very important UK side as well. Australia and Britain are cooperating on a next-generation nuclear submarine. The first one of those is set to hit the water in the late 2030s. How confident can we be that that timeline will be achieved?
Look, I think we've got to make sure it is delivered. I'm not as close to it as I used to be. Procurement projects, particularly in the defence space, are notoriously challenging. It's certainly right to say that the West has got a certain short-term lens. Commercially, you see it with shareholders. They're looking to their quarterly shareholder value and moments with their boards and their shareholders. Governments notoriously following the 24-hour news cycle. China doesn't do that. China looks and takes a 10-year, 20-year view. That's what it's done with critical minerals. That's what it does in the security space. We've got to show that we can answer that and reconcile the sort of competitive spirit with the collaborative spirit of Western liberal, so-called liberal democracies. This is a good challenge for that, but I think it's one that we take up the bat and see it through.
Dominic Raab, thanks for your time.
Good to talk to you.